Hi again, back for part two. Okay, we're going to work through problem two and problem three, and then with the remaining time, you have two homework assignments, and I'll talk more about those after we finish this page. So for number two, we have the expression two groups of 3x plus 1 plus negative 5x plus negative 3. And they've copied that into the first row of the table. Remember that there has been no change made yet, and that's because this is the expression that was given to us. So no change, given expression. But if I now compare that with the second line, I can see that they have cleared the parentheses. They've multiplied 2 times 3x to get 6x and 2 times 1 to get 2. Everything else remains the same. So we can say that they distributed. We could be a little more specific and say that they distribute the 2 to the 3x and the 1. But I'm going to keep our explanation short and sweet, as I said. So they've distributed, and of course it's the distributive property that they used to clear the parentheses. So our justification is the property that was used to make the change. In the next step, I noticed that the terms are in a different order. So they've switched the 2 and the negative 5x, and the negative 5x comes first and the 2 comes second. So we'll describe that as changed order. And we remember, hopefully, from page 36 that when they change the order, it's the commutative property that they're using. Because they changed the order of the terms that they're adding, this is the commutative property of addition. So we want to make sure we say which commutative property it is. Okay, the next thing I notice is that they've grouped the like terms, the variable terms, and they've grouped our constants. And so when they group terms, they're using the associative property. So grouped like terms, and the associative property of addition is what allows us to group terms together when we're adding. Okay, and again, we want to be specific and say whether we're using the associative property of addition or multiplication, in this case addition. And I noticed that they have combined the like terms. So if I look at the coefficients, 6 and negative 5 gives us 1, so 1x, and our constants would give us 2 zero pairs and 1 negative remaining. So they combined like terms, and that is the substitution property at work when we replace one value for another because they're equivalent. Now, notice that they left the answer as 1x plus negative 1, but we know that in a final answer, having that coefficient of 1 is not simplest form. And so I'm just going to note down here that simplest form would be x plus negative 1. We want to make sure that we simplify on our test next week so that we don't get marked down for leaving that coefficient of 1 in there. All right, last one. Same idea, new expression. This time we have three groups of 1 plus 7x plus negative 5. And of course, we see that in the first line of the table. There is no change between what was in the directions and what's in the first row of the table, and that's because it's the given expression. But if I make my way down the table, so I'm looking at the second row, I expected them to distribute the 3 like they've done the last couple of times, but they haven't done that yet. Instead, in the parentheses, they've changed the order of the terms. So I'm going to note here that the order was changed. And anytime we change the order with addition or multiplication, that's the commutative property. Because these terms are being added, it's the commutative property of addition that was used. And then, as expected, I noticed that they've multiplied 3 times 7x, that's 21x, and 3 times 1, that's 3. So they distributed the 3, as I expected them to do, and that, of course, is the distributive property always pretty obvious when the distributive property has been used. All right, next up. Our like terms are the constants here because they both lack a variable, and I notice that they have grouped them. So they have grouped the like terms, or we can say specifically they grouped the constants. Anytime we group for addition or multiplication, we're using the associative property. In this case, they have grouped terms that they're adding, so the associative property of addition. I expect that they're going to add those together now. 3 positives and 3 negatives would form 0 pairs, leaving us with 2 negatives. So they have, in fact, combined the like terms, or again, more specifically, they combined the constants, and that is just the substitution property, replacing one value for another because they're equivalent. So in other words, 3 plus 5 is negative 2. And the last thing they did, and we saw this in a previous problem, instead of plus a negative, they've gone back to subtraction. So they changed addition to subtraction. And like I said previously, typically we go from subtraction to addition to help us simplify. But if I go from addition back to subtraction, it's still the definition of subtraction that allows us to go back and forth between the two operations. So definition of subtraction to finish it up. And remember, we can't simplify any farther because these are not like terms, so we have to keep them separate. So that is the end of lesson 3.2c. Nothing really new here, just some review of the properties. A couple of things now before you use the rest of the class time, hopefully productively. You have 2 homework assignments today. So 3.2c homework you're going to complete. Make sure you use the notes that we just filled in on pages 36, 37, and 38 to help you with those problems. Also, you will complete the Module 3 review worksheet that the substitute will hand out. It's on long paper, so before you put it away at the end of class, you'll need to fold it in half. Both assignments are due on Monday when I see you next. So 3.2c homework is due on Monday, and the Module 3 review worksheet is due on Monday. I will be here tomorrow before school, and I will be here tomorrow after school if you have any questions about the lesson or the homework assignments. Monday is a late start, so I will be in meetings before school, but we'll go over both of the assignments in class on Monday, and we'll spend our time getting ready for the Module 3 test, which for you is next Tuesday. So you want to keep that in the back of your mind as you're working on your assignments for the remainder of the period. Stay focused, be productive, and let me know tomorrow before or after school if you have any questions about any of it. Okay, please be on your best behavior for the substitute, and I will see you next week when I'm back.